There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to another In Other Words. You know what it's about. It's me talking about words I find. And then I look them up online and then I tell you what I found out about them. Because I'm no expert. I'm just a word nerd. I've cut them back down to about 6 per episode so that I will do them more often and you might make time to watch them. 2 each from 3 books. The first book is Kate Atkinson's A God in Ruins, a fantastic novel. I'm more than halfway through. It's just stellar. The first one is Riffling. One of the major minor characters, Izzy, is referred to as riffling through the society pages. Riffle. I don't think I have ever seen riffle. And when I think of somebody riffling through pages, I think, oh, that's a mistake. It should be rifle through pages, which is a verb that's very familiar to me in that context. And I have found that, no, they're quite different. And riffle is the one that should be used more commonly. So I don't know if I just unconsciously converted every instance of riffle that I encountered in my reading to rifle, but for me it was a brand new word. So when you're riffling, you're hastily flipping through something or shuffling cards. I'd never heard it in the context of shuffling cards either. Whereas when you're rifling through something, you're searching frantically or ransacking. So there's a sense of violence or incredibly frantic searching when you're rifling through something. When you're riffling through it, you're just going through it fairly fast. So they're pretty close, but there's an extra nuance with rifle that I was not aware of. Riffle, the first occurrence in English was in 1754, and it meant to make the water choppy. In American English, they think it's a variant of ruffle, to make rough, to ruffle your feathers. The word shuffle, the only verb I've ever heard to do with playing cards is shuffle. Okay, I totally misread my notes as I was making the video. I don't mean the word shuffle, I mean the meaning of shuffling cards for the verb riffle. That's first recorded 1894. To skim, to leaf through something quickly, for example, papers, the newspaper. First recorded 1922, more common in American English. They think that riff, the jazz verb, the melodic phrase in jazz, that I guess noun and then later verb, which dates from 1934, could be a shortened form of riffle. And of course we now use riff to kind of speak spontaneously and at length about something that you didn't prepare for, to riff on it. Rifle is a much older verb, meaning to plunder, dating in English to the early 14th century, which goes back to the Old French rifler, meaning to strip, filch, plunder, peel skin or bark off, fleece, or to graze or scratch, from the 12th century. They think that goes back to German. In Old High German, riffelon meant to tear by rubbing. And then perhaps even further back to Old Norse, rifa, meaning to tear or break. The next phrase that I encountered is actually the name of an organization, and that is the Kindred of the Kibbo Kift. I had never heard of it. It actually plays a fairly central role in the novel, especially during Ted's youth. That organization, which was akin to Boy Scouts, but rejected the militarism that was fairly prevalent in the Boy Scout movement in the UK between the wars. That's what I've managed to find out. And the Kibbo Kift was, in fact, quite the opposite, promoting peace. Some of the things that they had the kids do, wood crafting and maybe badges and stuff, were quite similar, but there was also an emphasis in the Kibbo Kift on folk dance and folk songs. It's quite an interesting story, and it plays an interesting role in the opening of the Kate Atkinson novel. What I find the most fascinating about the Kindred of the Kibbo Kift, and yes, the initials were KKK, absolutely no connection. It was an internationalist. I don't think it necessarily preached an anti-racist message to its followers, but it was not a racist thing by any means. Founded in 1920 by a charismatic artist and writer, John Hargrave. And there was lots of splinters, and so there was a split where one branch became the Green Shirt Movement for Social Credit. And then in 1935, the Social Credit Party of Great Britain and Northern Ireland was formed. And that was a political party that was based on some arcane political philosophy based on monetary reform, and the children's group was completely subsumed into the Social Credit Party, and Kibbo Kift was disbanded in 1935. Social Credit was somewhat prominent in British politics until 1951, but in Canada, Social Credit was still somewhat of a major political force in Western Canada. Never in Saskatchewan, but one province over, Alberta, was controlled by social credit governments from about 1930 until about, 1960s, maybe longer. And BC, British Columbia, similar. And I still don't know how to explain what social credit is. I tried to read a few paragraphs. I kept falling asleep. It's something really... In Canada, it took a very Christian right feel, where the British had none of that, apparently. But I can't believe that this peace-loving children's group that was an alternative to Boy Scouts ended up becoming a major right-wing conservative force in Western Canadian politics. The Kibbo Kift. Kibbo Kift, the name, comes from an archaic Cheshire dialect, and it meant proof of great strength. That's all I could find out about it. Let me know if you know more. Still also just delighted by this 1945 British novel, Norman Collins's London Belongs to Me. So a couple from here. One is the phrase, look slippy. I'd never heard of that before. Slippy, as an adjective, is a informal shortened form of slippery, but the phrase doesn't seem to have any etymological connection to slippery. Look slippy means be quick, hurry up, make haste. And I couldn't find another darn thing about where it came from, so I am throwing this out there to all of you word wizards to tell me more about it, because there's nothing online. And now I'm going to get all biblical on you. One of the characters in here, Connie, she's a down-and-out, middle-aged airhead, and she can't afford to pay her rent. So she's having a conversation with her landlady and hands her a pittance. Just a small amount of what she owes for back rents. And she said, here you are, the widow's mite. Widow's mite, I've never heard that before. So that comes from the Bible, particularly from the book of Mark and the book of Luke, where Jesus is teaching at the temple in Jerusalem. And according to the Gospel according to Mark, 2 mites, which is equivalent to the ancient coin, the Greek lepta, are worth a quadrans, which is the smallest Roman coin. Now that's far too much information. My eyes are glazing over. I don't know about yours. But it was the smallest and least valuable coin in circulation in Judea. So in the Bible story, many rich people are coming to donate money to the temple, and a poor widow came and just threw in a few small coins. And Jesus said, Amen, I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all the other contributors to the treasury. That phrase doesn't occur there, but that's where it comes from. So it's when a poor person contributes what they can, and it's not very much, the widow's mite. So this character, Connie, she's handing over a little bit of what she owes for back rent, and she's calling it the widow's mite. Hopefully to elicit some biblical Christian compassion from her landlady. The last two come from a novel that I've been doing on audio for more than 6 months, and it's going to take me a year and a half to finish, because the first of 2 parts is 34 hours, and I'm 40% of the way through that, and I'm absolutely loving it. Clarissa, 1748, by Samuel Richardson. And there's so much good vocabulary. 2 that I've encountered this week. One is draught, spelled the British way, draught with the A-U-G-H-T. I was aware that the British spelling was this one, and then the North American is draft with A-F-T. But I had never seen the phrase a rough draft, meaning an early version of some text, some piece of writing, spelled the British way. And I did quite a deep dive on this, and I think possibly, and I need you guys to help me too, but I couldn't find any reference in any dictionary to the meaning of it being an early version of a piece of writing, or a draft, spelled the British way. And what I did find was several dictionaries said that that meaning has always been spelled draft, even in British English. The only one I found was Thomas Jefferson's draft of the Declaration of Independence. He wrote on it, or a covering memo, that it was his original rough draft, and it was spelled with the A-U-G-H-T. But that is literally the only occurrence I have found online of that meaning of draft spelled that way. So, the Declaration of Independence, the draft of it would have been, early 1770s? This is 1768. So I guess it was used at that time, but no current dictionaries, not even the Oxford English Dictionary, available to me online, records that spelling for that meaning. So there you go. And lastly, fie. Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Jack and the Beanstalk. It's also in Clarissa, fie upon you. It's an archaic, especially when used more modernly, a humorous expression, but it's used to express disgust or outrage. And I had fun looking into this one. It comes from Middle English via Old French, from Latin, the Latin fie, F-I with no E, and it's always meant an exclamation of disgust at a stench. It then became kind of a curse word, fie upon you, which transmutes that bad smell into, it's kind of like the old eat shit and die. Came into English late 13th century. They think that the Old French was also reinforced by Old Norse and other Scandinavian forms. In 19th century British English, fie was a jocular word meaning improper, and as a noun meant a woman of tarnished reputation. But the interjection, fie upon you, again, kind of takes that original bad smell meaning and goes with it. In Lear, Shakespeare uses it a couple times. Fie, pa, similar expression of disgust or at a bad smell. But then he also uses it in Act 3, Scene 4, fee, fo, and fum, I smell the blood of a British man. In fact, when the giant in Jack and the Beanstalk says, fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman, even though in the next line he says he's going to grind and eat his bones, he is expressing disgust at the smell, apparently. There's an amazing amount of research on this that is quite interesting. There's an old Norwegian fairy tale where an expression of disgust is used for the smell of Christian/human blood by the monster. And he's using the word huff, and that one has been etymologically linked with fie. So, there you go. Thanks for watching.